Yeah, hi sir.
Hello, Abhilash.
Yeah, so sir, how are you doing?
I am fine. How are you?
Yeah, we are all going through the same phase, so sitting at our home and doing this interview. Otherwise, maybe we would be sitting face to face.
That's right. But everything has got their own effect and charm, right? So
Yeah, right.
now this pandemic has given us some new ways to think and connect. Means it
Yeah,
was always there, but probably never before we did something like this.
yeah, surely. So, sir, I know about you. We have been in discussion since a lot of days. So I know about your book also and everything. So, for our viewers, can you please let them know something about yourself? What Vivek Dutta was before becoming a writer? What was your user life or profession like before becoming an author?
Uh, well, that's an interesting question. Uh,
Yeah.
it's not a question of was. So I still am just having two hats now. So
Yeah.
apart from being an author, I am a software technology professional. In fact,
Okay.
I have given myself a fancy title of software technology enabler.
Okay.
I train in various IT companies as a corporate trainer on IT technologies. So
Okay.
you can count almost all the multinationals in the group of my clientele.
So, right from industry, how did you get into this something a sector like writing, which is too into literacy and too into philosophies and everything? So, how did you get into the writing? How did this idea of writing came to you?
I would say software industry was a latter addition to my profile. I
Okay.
have been by professionally a trainer, as I said, but I
Yeah.
always fancy myself as a storyteller. So even in
Okay.
my IT trainings, programming,
Yeah.
architecture, you will find a lot of reference about the stories
Yeah.
that can be from Akbar Virwal to movie, because I
Yeah.
feel the stories make you understand a concept, a perspective much better.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I have always been a storyteller, even in the corporate storytelling. I use it a lot.
Yeah.
So it was just a matter of probably penning it down.
Yeah. So, including all the genres, how did you decide to write or get into mythology as a subject or ancient history as a subject? Because as far as what I know as a reader, mythology consists a lot of research into it, and everything is very, complex. Easy but yet complex because you have to go through a lot of things. So, how did your first writing project turned out into something that is very much into mythology and history?
Yeah. But let me ask this question to you, Abhilash. Don't you think this is a natural genre for us, the Indians? Because as a kid, when
Yeah.
we start learning these epic tales. And here I would
Right.
like to just add a correction. I desist from using the word mythology, which, according to me, is more of a slang for great Indian epics. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I understand you.
mythology looks like myth. So,
Yeah.
I always prefer to call it the epic. And the epic is the first stories we as an Indian learn, the
Hmm.
Ramayana, Mahabharata, the Purans. So, naturally, it is going to be the first one. But in my family, it is probably deeper. We grew up learning those stories, and naturally, we are with those stories from the beginning. Moreover, we are from the generation where the Ramayana Mahabharata TV shows were telecast when we
Yeah,
were
right.
kids.
Kids, yeah.
So that also had its own impact.
Yeah. So tell us something about your first book. The title of for the viewers, I will let you know that the title of the book is The Accursed God, and I do not have the copy with me right now because the printing is in
I'll
hold
show you
because
the
of the
copy here right
certification.
now.
Oh, okay, you have.
And
Okay, great.
and this is the only physical copy of my book available as of now. This is the master copy, and rest of them is under the COVID. So
Oh,
the book is, as you know, is available on Kindle right now,
yeah,
and
right.
I am waiting for the paperback to be published as soon as there is a lockdown lifted in Delhi.
Okay, okay, okay. So yeah, tell us about your book, The Accursed God. What it is all about?
Okay, so for the viewers, I believe you already know that
Yeah.
the this book, The Accursed God, is the book one of my series, The Lost Epic. And The book is based on the story of Mahabharata.
Okay.
And before you just put, before your viewers put it, just another story on Mahabharata, I have taken it as a perception, the holistic figure with one central question: why was the Kurukshetra war a dharma yuddha? So,
Hmm.
when we see the basic tale, there is a battle between Kaurav and Pandav, and
Hmm.
they are fighting. They are fighting for a kingdom. Maybe they are fighting for a revenge.
Yeah, right.
But what merits it to become a dharma yuddha?
Hmm.
Why Krishna calls it a dharma yuddha?
Yeah.
So either there is something simply glossy over it, just a glossy word, or there is something which we miss.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when
Hmm.
I started looking deeper here, you see, you can consider it as the first ever world war,
Hmm.
because all the civilized kingdoms of that time, the Aryavarta, they were struggling in one single battle.
Hmm.
There were Panchal, there was Virat, there was Matsya, there was Magad, and they had nothing to do with the Hastinapur Empire,
Hmm.
Hastinapur kingdom. So
Right.
why were they involved in this war?
Hmm.
Unless there
Hmm.
is something more than meets the eye. And that is
Right.
where I said there is a epic which is lost in time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
is my attempt to rediscover that epic.
So my next question would be that generally when, because I have been into reading since last 10 to 11 years, very deep into it, reading 50 to 70 books every year. So what I have seen is that whenever anyone is writing about Mahabharata, they generally select the characters such as Karna or say Lord Krishna or Draupadi. How did you went ahead and choose in someone like Bhishma and thought of writing about him as a protagonist and then talking about the war of Mahabharata or whatever happened before that?
Abhilash, I feel Mahabharata is not a single hero epic. Means
Hmm.
there are so many characters, and almost every character is a hero in their own accord.
Yes, yes, yes.
So, first thing I must tell you, the book is not about Bhishma.
Okay.
Of course, it starts with Bhishma.
Yeah.
And the idea also germinated from another interesting question. We often see when we talk about Mahabharata, we talk a lot about how valiant Bhishma was, how great, how good as a person he was,
Hmm.
how wise he was.
Hmm.
But when we see his actions, he appears anybody but wise. It looks like that he was confused, delusioned. He didn't
Hmm.
know whether he had taken an oath for the welfare of the king or the kingdom.
Hmm.
So my question was, Bhishma is either very intelligent or very stupid.
Hmm.
And because most of the narration takes him towards delusional old man,
Hmm.
I had a question: what if he was not delusional? What if
Hmm.
he didn't do something because some oath which he misinterpreted?
Hmm.
What if it was something of a bigger plan? And
Right.
there I saw the myth. So that's how Bhishma becomes the first protagonist in my story. But as the story will progress, and as the story has progressed in my story, there are many more protagonists in the story, right? In the book one, there will be
Yeah.
many more that will be coming in the other series parts.
Understood. So as you said in between that you don't think that Mahabharata is about one basic character and almost every character has their own role and a very big role in defining a few philosophies or say few dharmas. So I always thought that it is something like Avengers where we can, if someone thinks about creating movies, so every movie can be about each of the character and then all of them can come together and it can be something like a Avengers, where it can go on for years and we can build something like that in India and people would be more, knowing about all those characters that we don't generally speak about, such as Bhishma, as we don't know much about him, what happens with when he was young or when he was growing up or when he was trying to be king and all of those phases when he grew up and turned into Bhishma. So my next question would to you would be how easy or difficult it was to write about Bhishma because as far as my knowledge is that not much is available about Bhishma because everyone focuses mainly about what happens once Dhritarashtra and Pandu comes into the picture and the fight for throne or the Game of Thrones starts. So how
Yeah,
easy or
right.
difficult it was for you to write about or know about Bhishma before drafting this book?
Yeah. Before I answer your question, I would like to put my comment on what you said earlier about Avengers and the Game of Thrones,
Yeah.
I would say Avengers and Game of Thrones are successors of Mahabharata and not vice versa.
Hmm.
Mahabharata
Yeah.
can be truly seen as the inspiration for them. And
100%.
what I liked a lot about Avengers or the story like these is, I will also include Harry Potter there.
Ah, yeah.
We have a story which is not about winning. We
Yeah.
have a story about surviving.
Mm-hmm.
If you see Avenger, the heroes were not really winning. They
Yeah.
were surviving a battle,
Yeah.
trying to survive. If you look into the last part of Harry Potter and team, they were no closer to killing Voldemort.
Right.
They were trying to survive somehow.
Ah.
And that survival makes a great story.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, when we look into the way Mahabharata is presented generally, we miss that survival story. So
Hmm.
that was one of the things which I wanted to bring out through my series, that you should have something which is very, very powerful, and to remind that it's not Avenger which started this thing, rather our epic had.
Yeah.
Now, coming to your question, how easy or difficult it is? Well, it's both. It's easy and it's difficult. We have Mahabharata. As you know, it's the greatest epic that has ever been written
Hmm.
in any literature.
Yeah. Right.
And currently, the text for Mahabharata, which has been critically endorsed, comprises of 84,000 sloks.
Oh.
If you look into a book published by Gita Press on Mahabharata,
Yeah.
it is 6 volume, each comprising of 1500 pages.
Oh.
So you have sufficient material to
Okay.
go on to
Okay.
help
Okay.
all your researches. But I am talking about 84,000 sloks and almost 9,000 pages.
Hmm.
So that is the difficulty. Moreover, if you look into Mahabharata, the story does not proceed in one direction from the beginning to the end.
Hmm.
Several stories are mixed together and many references come at a different places.
Hmm.
So, for example, the story of how Dronacharya was a guru of Karn,
Hmm.
it comes in a very late stage called Shanti where Karn also gets cursed from Parshuram. And
Yeah.
Shanti comes much later, the end of the Kurukshetra war.
Hmm.
So there is no sequence where, okay, if I have gone from here to here, I know the whole story.
Right. Right. Right.
You need to filter out and check all of those things, and that is the most difficult part of the story.
So how much time it took you to go through all these texts and finally deciding how you will proceed ahead with it?
See, fortunately, I have been going through the Mahabharata text for decades now.
Oh,
And
okay.
from a time when there was no real book in mind to be written, it was more as a reader,
Okay.
somebody who would like to grasp the epic.
Hmm.
So I had already a lot of research, but in a story, when I started to write a lot of stories, they grew, they manifested themselves.
Yeah.
So they come and you realize that this is a story which has to be here. Because see, when you write a fiction, it is about perception, right?
Right.
You are also adding a perception, you are not really translating. So this book is not a translation, it's a fiction. So it
Yeah.
includes certain perceptions where I have tried to use what I call as reading between the lines,
Yeah.
reading in the silence,
Yeah.
where the story does not say a lot.
Yeah.
For example, Mahabharat original story does not cover a great detail about the story of Chitrangad.
Hmm.
A short story where Chitrangad fights his namesake and dies,
Yeah.
but
Your
does
book has
not
a
go
major
into
part of it.
complete detail.
Yeah.
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 So that is where you can introduce your creativity without actually distorting the epic. So I'm not
Hmm.
trying to negate what epic has to say,
Hmm.
but I am trying to fill in where epic is silent.
Yeah. Where they are not discussing much about things
Yeah.
that should
So
be.
my concern was Chitrangad. The epic says Chitrangad, the brother of Bhishma, dies fighting a Chitrangad Gandharv.
Yeah.
My question was, what was valiant Bhishma doing there?
Hmm.
His brother is dead. There must
Hmm.
be something he must have felt, thought, said. And that
Yeah.
is where a story is born.
Yeah. Yeah. So my next question would be, as we know that in between you pointed out that I should not call it mythology but epic. Similarly, people also consider Mahabharata as a religious, in some religious context also. So it is somewhere related to religion also by few people. So wasn't there a fear in your mind when you were writing about such characters on Mahabharata that people might, negate what you are saying, or people might object? Why are you writing about some of the religious characters in the way that you are writing about? I know that you are not distorting the fact, but still, isn't there a fear when you are writing on such topics which can also hurt people's religious sentiments in case it does?
Uh, I agree with you, Abhilash. Honestly speaking, I am not worried. I am terrified
Oh, yeah.
because people, and honestly speaking, I am not terrified that I will hurt the sentiment of those who take it religiously.
Hmm.
Rather, hurt the sentiment of those who are actually the critic of the original epic Mahabharata.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Over last several years, unfortunately, a lot of fiction about Mahabharata has been written,
Hmm.
which is completely in contrast with the epic, which talks about things which
Hmm.
not only does not exist in epic, but it is a contradiction. You must have read
Hmm.
books where Duryodhan becomes a hero.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I
You
have
you
read
you
many
you,
books.
you must have
Yeah.
you must have read books where you will see a love angle between Draupadi and Kern. And
Yes, yes,
nothing
yes.
of that sort actually exists in the epic of Vyas.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So, when I am going to contradict certain of the mythical tales, and here I will be using the word mythic, not epic,
Hmm.
those mythical tales, I am worried about the backslashes that I am going to face because some of them are too popular.
Yeah. Actually, as you discussed, also my next question was also related to that. Uh, should we fictionalize our mythology? Should we fictionalize those things and try to speak it in a own version? So what I see as of now is, if we talk about Ramayana, the first Ramayana was written by Valmiki and the second was written by Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas. But people mostly are following Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas. Now, when you ask them, oh, is this the original one? They say, yeah, this is the Ramayana which was written first. They don't even remember that it was something else that was written before that. Now we are in 2000 AD, say. Now, after 3000, 4000 years, when people would be looking back to Mahabharata, so now they would not be able to understand if the one written by, say you, or the one which is actually the real Mahabharata, which is the oldest one or which is the real one. So because we are fictionalizing the mythology so much, don't you feel that the authenticity is getting affected, or say is this something valid, or should we avoid doing it? That is my question to you, basically.
Uh, that's a good question, Abhilash. Abhilash, if I tell you,
Yeah.
the idea of adding the creative contextual details is one of the intrinsic feature of our epical journey.
Hmm.
Originally, this epic wasn't really penned down or written on a piece of paper kind.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
It was transferred as Smriti and what you call Shruti and Smriti.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
hear it, you
Hmm.
remember it, you transfer it. And in the
Hmm.
process, many stories automatically get added.
Hmm.
So it
Hmm.
was perfectly acceptable form, and those stories helps us make these tales, make these historical incidents
Hmm.
more contextual. Let us
Hmm.
understand why do I need to know what happened 5000 or 7000 years ago
Right.
unless it has got some great values for us. Now
100%.
I
Yeah.
would like to give you an example here.
Hmm.
You talked about Ramayana. And
Yes.
honestly speaking, there are more than 300 Ramayans available. Some of
Yeah.
them are from Indonesia, Bali,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
other countries as well.
Hmm.
And when we are talking about Ramayana, let me talk about one aspect of Ramayana.
Hmm.
Not many of your viewers will be maybe knowing that in Balmiki Ramayana there is no reference of Lakshman Rekha.
Yeah. 100%.
Lakshman Rekha does
Yeah.
not exist in
Hmm.
Balmiki Ramayana. It does
Hmm.
not exist in Kamban Ramayana. It does
Hmm.
not exist in Vyas Ramayana. And by the
Hmm.
way, inside Mahabharata, there is a Ramayana written by Viveks also, which is available in the one parv. So
Okay,
it does
okay.
not exist at any of those places. In fact, even in Tulsidas Ramcharitammanas, it
Hmm.
does not exist in Aranyakand where Ravan kidnaps Sita. It is a
Hmm.
passing by reference given in the
Hmm.
Lanka Kand there.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
question is, this is by all authentic reference a fiction.
Hmm.
So, and this fiction is a late addition. I would say this was added first time in Ranganath Ramayana in Telugu,
Okay.
and it was after 1000 AD.
Okay.
So, why do you think this Lakshmana Rekha all of a sudden manifested in after 1000 years? As I
Hmm.
see, this was the period when invaders started to attack India.
Yeah,
The
1080
Mughals
around. Yeah.
came
Hmm.
around 1000 AD
Hmm.
and they started to brutalizing Indian family,
Hmm.
kidnapping, abduction, and rape started.
Hmm.
And we needed a model, role model,
Hmm.
to keep the family together. To
Hmm.
ask the women folk that do not venture out of your house unless you have a guardian along with you to
Yes.
prevent you from abduction. But if today against a rapist I say 10 things, but I say one thing that ladies should be careful, I become probably a rapist. I
Ah.
become
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
an
No one
abuser.
wants to hear that.
So
Yeah.
no one wants to hear that. So how
Yeah.
do you say the same story in a very subtle way? So
Hmm.
probably our scholars added a story that look, when Sita crossed
Ah.
that line, she was
Ah.
abducted.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here
Right.
you see, I agree it's a fiction, but I
Yeah.
agree it's a very, very valuable
Hmm.
add-on. And such fiction should be appreciated. So
Hmm.
question, the bottom line becomes the
Where do we
element
draw the
which I am
line?
adding,
Hmm.
the element which we are adding,
Yeah.
are they giving value? Are they doing some constructive addition? Or they are
Hmm.
simply criticizing, trying to break your epic apart? So I
100%.
think
Yeah.
that is the difference, not adding or not adding the fictions.
Hmm. So my this would be my last question about your character Bhishma. So one of the very popular author had recently said in one of an interview that Bhishma got such a brutal death because he was part of the injustice that was met out to Dhritarashtra. He was an eligible person to become a king, but only because he was a blind person, he was not given that honor to be the king. So, as Bhishma is your central character in this first part of the book, so what opinion do you have about this statement that has been put out?
I think I know which author you are talking about.
Yeah.
I would rather ask you a question. Do you remember Pulwama attack, the recent
Hmm.
times,
Hmm.
when a whole van of Indian
Hmm.
armed forces people were
Right.
blown up into pieces?
Hmm.
What was their sin? They met a death much violent than what Bhishma met, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Right.
So did they met an end, a terrible end, because they were sinners, because they made some mistake, because
Hmm.
as I believe what they were doing was the best in the interest of our country.
Hmm.
So
Right.
we cannot judge the karma on this basis.
Hmm.
By the
Hmm.
way, Dhritarashtra,
Hmm.
he may have been a very, very brave person. He may
Hmm.
be a very able person. And
Hmm.
probably Bhishma did an individual injustice to that gentleman
Hmm.
by not making him the king.
Hmm.
That must have been a personal agony.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
100%.
there
Yeah.
is a more valid question in my understanding.
Hmm.
Was Dhritarashtra the best person to be the king? Means he may be a good person, but was
Hmm.
he the best person? So question
Yeah.
is, should I consider the personal ambition first, or should I be considering the nation first?
Hmm.
Means should I make Bhishma only because Dhritarashtra a king because he wants to be a king,
Hmm.
or means basically country needs somebody better.
Someday better. Yeah. Right. The challenges that we are also
So
facing in our current times also.
right. So
Yeah.
that is the main question Bhishma had.
Hmm.
And as you can see, it was a very short period for which Dhritarashtra was not the king. After
Hmm.
that, Pandu dies and he becomes the king.
Yeah.
So what does the history of Mahabharata tell? How good a king he was?
Hmm. Right.
So,
So yeah.
and if you look into Mahabharata,
Hmm.
in Mahabharata, in the very first Parv, Adi Parv,
Hmm.
there is an introduction which says Duryodhano Manumayo Mahadroma Moolam
Hmm.
Raja Dhritarashtra Manishi. That
Hmm.
means Duryodhan is a tree of lust and anger,
Okay.
and Dhritarashtra is the root of this tree.
Oh.
So even Vedvyas wanted to confirm that Dhritarashtra was somebody who doesn't deserve to be a king.
Hmm.
So I do not know what our learned author was thinking, but
Yeah.
Dhritarashtra is clearly marked as
Hmm.
the root of an evil tree. And
Hmm.
Bhishma decided not to let him continue, something very unlike our current system, as you rightly pointed out.
Right, right, right. So, in between, when we were discussing about Ramayana, you told about how we cannot speak about women not going out of the house just because there are many people who are, you know, ready to pounce upon them. So, from this, my question comes about the character of Amba that you have defined in your book. So, as you have defined, it is all about the woman empowerment or the power of the woman even during those times. So the her character is one of the strongest character I felt in your book, even more stronger than Bhishma at one point of the time. So let us know something about your thoughts on her character and how women were, projected during those times and how powerful or how respectful they were.
See, right from our old Vedas to Manusmriti
Yeah.
to our Puranic culture, we
Hmm.
have been worshipping Devi.
Yeah.
We say Shiva without Shakti is Shav. He cannot do
Hmm.
anything
Hmm.
without Shakti. Where we have always been quite respectful to the feminine power, and that is something that has happened only in our Sanatan Hindu Dharma. It doesn't happen
Hmm.
anywhere where you have such a female protagonist at par, and
Yeah.
another form of Shiva is Ardhanarishwar. So
Hmm.
we have always been worshipping, and
Hmm.
Amba is the name of Shakti.
Hmm.
Devi Parvati. That's that
Oh, okay.
that is one
Yeah.
of her name.
Yeah.
So Amba has always been very strong character. Means somebody who can dare to talk to Bhagwan Parshuram and try to bow down to Bhishma. She must be
Hmm.
powerful.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the modern narration, which I generally find, I
Hmm.
find her to be arrogant. And there was one nagging question while I was working on the character of Amba.
Yeah.
Is Amba tries her best
Hmm.
to marry Bhishma, who was oath bound not to marry.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
she did not take much effort to marry her fiance or what her love Shalva Kumar. So
Hmm.
why was it? Miss,
Hmm.
what was it? Probably, and I will not give a spoiler to the story, but
Hmm.
this was a question which led to the character who was powerful, strong
Hmm.
enough to stand not only against Bhishma but also
Hmm.
against Parshuram. So she was one of the great characters, and
Hmm.
I always feel that our feminine characters were strong, and that is something I
Yeah.
have also tried to do with the character of Kunti.
Yeah. So my next question would be, as I have seen in your book and also in many books, but generally in your book right now, you have discussed a lot of regions of those ancient India times and also about their respective kings. So how difficult it was for you to understand the regions during the ancient India, their names, and then who was the king at exactly that contemporary time in which you were writing your story in. So how did you manage that?
See, many of these names come directly from the Mahabharata itself,
Okay.
specifically the most important names in the story. For
Hmm.
example, the regions of Hastinapur,
Hmm.
Panchal,
Hmm.
Mathura, Gandhar.
Hmm.
These names comes directly from the epic.
Hmm.
And there are some minor names where creative liberties have been taken. For
Yeah.
example, you will find a character called Yamesh. So
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
are few characters which you need to add in your story because you don't have the story of every prime minister and every uh, army
Yeah.
general of every kingdom. But
Yeah.
beyond that, most of the names, for example, of the important kingdom at least,
Hmm.
including the whole Panchal dynasty,
Hmm.
including the father of Shantanu, the brothers of Shantanu,
Hmm.
they are part of Mahabharata. Just you need to read them, and probably people don't put too much weightage on those lines.
Yeah. Right. So, Vivek, as we know that your current book is the first book's printing is somewhere in hold, and you are not able to progress with its publishing and taking it out for us readers. Even I don't have. I have gone through the ebook that you have on the Kindle platform. So my question to you is that
Yeah.
how is the status of the second book of this series? I mean, where have you reached? Have you started? Where is it, and when that could be out? I know that's a little vague question for now, but still, where is it?
Uh, yeah, the
Okay.
work on book has started, but it is nowhere
Okay.
near completion right now. So I think it will be another probably 5 6 months before we should be in a position to start. And I believe that is okay because the paperback is
Hmm.
still delayed for mine. So we
Yeah.
must give readers some time to digest and talk about the book before we
Yes.
give them the second
So
installment, right? So I think it will take at least a six
for this
months
book to
time frame.
release.
No, no, no. This book, actually, I am hoping that it should be
Okay.
released this month.
So
I'm talking about a second one. It
for
will
you
take
to
six
complete
to
it.
eight months at least.
Okay. So
Yeah.
who's the central character there? If you can tell us.
Uh, Let it be
Okay.
probably a
Yeah.
surprise for the audience, but I can tell you this story, second character, when the story is supposed to move into the current genre of
Okay.
Kauravas and Pandavas, you will find this story to be quite different
Okay. Okay.
from the regular tale. Yeah, so I have something in plan which is going, and that's going to be very, very different from what you generally read as a Kaurava Pandava
So
story.
can we also expect something in the space of Ramayana also from you?
Ah,
Yeah.
that's a good question. And if you have read
Yeah.
my
Yes.
book,
Yes.
the first book which you have read, I have left a
Hmm.
few subtle
Okay.
hints that one day I plan to do a
Okay.
story on Ramayana also. In fact, I had started and completed a couple of chapters on Ramayana,
Hmm.
but that is self currently because this Mahabharata project is a big project for
Hmm.
me right now. And I am also working on my the Mahabharat project website where I'm trying to what I call
Oh.
demythify the epic, where I'm trying to weed out all the interpolations which are there in the real epic
Okay.
story.
Okay.
So that's a non-fiction. So on one
Acha.
side I'm trying to fictionalize, on the other side I'm trying to demythify the grossly inaccurate recitations which are
Hmm.
actually present there. So Mahabharat project is big, but someday the Ramayana story will certainly come. There is a lot of potential, and I think not many books are there on Ramayana
Hmm.
as there are on
But these
Mahabharat.
days I can see that many authors have also started getting into Ramayana because I believe researching about
Yeah,
Ramayana is
right.
little bit easy when it's compared to Mahabharata because Ramayana does not have too many characters, whereas Mahabharata has too many characters to uh, deep dive into. So that is why the new authors who wants to write in mythology who are also very young, so they choose Ramayana, they read two
Mhm.
or three versions of Ramayana, then they make something of their own, and then they start writing
Mhm.
about Ramayana. So Ramayana is
Mhm.
little bit easy, yeah, to get into. But
Right.
I see about Mahabharata, only
True.
mature writers or readers
Not
like
only it's
you
easy.
or someone like Amit Tripathi and people like in those areas are only trying to get into Mahabharata space because Mahabharata is little difficult to go when it is about research. You know better than me, but still.
No, you are right. See, unfortunate problem as I see in most of the fictional
Hmm.
representations here is I don't think many authors really want to read
Right.
the
Hmm.
original text
Right.
and then try to fictionalize it. They try to base their narrative on some
Hmm.
other fictional tales and probably the TV
Yeah.
show as we have. For the best example would be every
Yeah.
TV show that you see on
Hmm.
say the story of Mahabharata, it shows you Shakuni
Hmm.
limping. But honestly speaking, that was the idea of Goofy Pentel, who was the character director of B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata. It's not the
Yeah.
epic. It's not the epic. And because he was the
Hmm.
character director of Mahabharata, Shakuni
Hmm.
became very important character. He became the mastermind
Hmm.
almost parallel with Krishna. When you see the epic, it is not there. So many of the stories which are coming, they are not trying to
Hmm.
follow the epic because probably
Right.
there is
Right. Right.
not
Right.
much charm left for them. These storytellers are writing stories.
Yeah.
So same is happening in Ramayana, but yes, you see there are
Hmm.
fewer tales about
Right.
Ramayana to be told. It's a much smaller epic compared to Mahabharata. So yes, but again, I find there is a fascinating story there. So
Hmm.
here and there in my first book, I have
Okay.
left quite a few hints For example, there is one place where Bhishma says that to understand this story, you need another epic
I
on
noticed that. Yeah.
Ram.
So I thought, so that time because I was in that zone, I thought you were talking about Parshuram or something like that. I did not get into the.
No, no, it was a
Yeah,
story
yeah,
of Ram and Sita. So, so whether Ram atoned for sending Sita to forest or not, exile. So I gave a few hints, but I think
yeah.
you caught it. And yes, I certainly have an ambitious plan to cover Ramayana
Okay,
once my
great.
Mahabharata project is over.
So I just want to know from your personal opinion, what do you think? Did Ramayana or Mahabharata actually happened on a planet, or it did not?
See, the core incident has certainly happened. There can be no second doubt about it. See, if you go and ask
Hmm.
about Voldemort, do you think every
No.
Indian will know who is Voldemort? See, this is the idea of fiction. Somebody
Right.
reads it, somebody does not read it. We are having a story which is more than
Hmm.
5,000 years old, Mahabharata, and Ramayana at least
Hmm.
7,000 years old. Then there was no printing press,
Yeah.
no internet, no WhatsApp. The entire story propagated
Hmm.
as a word of mouth when there was no
Hmm.
easy transport of
Hmm.
communication or people movement. And you see the same story in northern
Hmm.
India, same story in southern India, which are by
Hmm.
culture too different from each other. Same story in
Hmm.
Indonesia,
Right.
Bhutan,
Hmm.
every part of the world. And it is too difficult to
Everywhere.
replicate the
Yeah.
same story, a fiction. How many people will be interested in reading a particular fiction? So this is something, Miss, in one of his movies, Amitabh Bachchan has praised you in
Hmm.
one of your blogs, right? So Mr. Amitabh Bachchan says, truth
Hmm.
is stranger than fiction. So something which
Yeah.
is only true uh, can be so accurate. So the core incident certainly happened. But
Hmm.
on the top of core incident, a lot
Yeah.
of
Right.
things
That has been developed.
they evolved.
Yeah.
As I said, Lakshman Rekha, as I said
Because
Lakshman Rekha. So they may
uh,
not be, but the core
yeah,
incident
once I was in
certainly happened.
discussion with one of my Muslim friends, and we were just talking about all these things. So he told me, so I asked him, what do you think about all of this? So even being a Muslim, and as we know that how much we negate each other's religion and all of that, still he says that because so many people from so many generations, so many years are talking about everything, and all the characters as they are have been kept intact from all these years. There has been something which has happened. Otherwise, something which is fake cannot go on for so many years and so long, and people would not have been convinced with this story if it would have not sounded truth. So maybe because now when we sit in this modern world, we do not realize that a man could have flown to Sri Lanka, or without any technology we could have built a bridge. So that is why now we cannot you know comprehend or anything like that. But when people at that point of time saw that bridge in front of them and everything, because few things were still available at that point of time, they they understood that this must have happened, or this happened. That is why he said that it has been continued for so long, and you guys still, yeah, after having all the
Yeah.
education, believe in it.
See, if you
Yeah.
also look at the narration, unlike history, which you say is always written from the
Hmm.
victor's perspective, or in fiction, there is a hero which is
Hmm.
all and all good,
Hmm.
at least he wins. We have in Mahabharata the Pandavas who are the
Yeah.
heroes, the good people. But Vedvyas has not refrained
Hmm.
from showing their vices.
Hmm.
Yudhishthir gambles,
Hmm.
he loses. At the end of Mahabharata, in fact,
Hmm.
after the death of Krishna, Arjun has a fight with a
Yeah.
band of robbers, and he, the hero of Mahabharata,
Okay.
cannot defeat them.
Oh.
His weapons fail. Now, if it is
Hmm.
going to be a fiction, which author would like to conclude
Yeah.
their greatest hero
Yeah. And that too
with a
against
failure?
few robbers.
So that failure has got a different reason. But he got lost. He who destroyed the entire
Hmm.
Kaurava army, he was lost to a
Hmm.
simple band of robbers. And this proves
Yeah.
that it was not a fiction. Those who were telling the story, they were telling about a man. And now this story is 35 years after the battle of Mahabharata. Arjun must have grown old. There was Krishna, his friend, mentor, friend, philosopher, guide, who had just died. So Arjun was devastated. With his friend, family gone, everybody gone, he was devastated. He was now an old man. And well, he lost. That shows the wisdom and the truth in the entire epic of Mahabharata. So I would say if you look into those narrations, it is difficult to disagree that those incidents happened. Otherwise, any fiction writer, they won't like their protagonist to lose
Right.
in such a miserable way. And they will not be telling that Yudhishthir gambled and lost his wife.
So in the end, I would say that I went to the Amazon page and found few reviews. So that means people have started picking up the ebook. What message do you have for the readers who have already trusted you and picked up your first book, even without knowing much about your book, because there has not been much of the promotion, as you have said, your printing thing is still into process. So message for your readers, and the last thing that you would like to say to our viewers, also yours and mine.
Honestly speaking, means for the first book, for those who have already purchased, those who
Yeah,
have become a reader like you, I can have no message other than thanks. And you people should be giving the message about
yeah,
what
sure.
you feel about my first book. For the second book, I would say that it should be
Hmm.
much better than the first one, and you will not be disappointed. I think I left the
Yeah.
story at one of the cliffhanger points, and people should be looking forward for an explanation. And second book will again be very, very different from the perspective
Hmm.
from what you read
Hmm.
in regular Mahabharata stories. It will be Mahabharata, and it will be quite
Yeah.
different from a regular Mahabharata of Kaurava and Pandavas. So, those who have already read, I hope they like the book. I would appeal to them that they should review my book, spread the word. Those who have not read, I would invite them to read the reviews and then read the books. And I hope the second book is going to be much grand and very, very different, not only from the main Mahabharata story, but also from
Yeah.
the first book. So, also from the first book, the story will take a drastic turn. It is not going to be in a sequence flow, it is going to take a drastic
Okay.
turn. That's all I can
Thank
say.
you, sir. It was nice talking to you. And we hope we have many such interviews and talk on religion, mythology, epic, and everything. And we discuss lot many things on a platform like this.
So, thanks, Abhilash. But since you have interviewed me, would you allow
Yeah.
me to interview you back? Means
Yeah.
maybe a few questions from my side. So, you read my book. What is your message to the readers of the book?
Yeah.
Means would you
So
like to
yeah. So I
send
have
some
also
of your
written in my
message?
review, but I have not published it yet. I am waiting for your hard copy to come to me. So until then, I will only say as of now that every time I have read about Mahabharata, it always started from the Dhritarashtra Pandu section, and even that was not discussed very much, and we directly came to Duryodhan and all the five Pandavas. This was the first time when I got to read about the tale much before these characters came into the picture, and how the the backdrop of Mahabharata is happening from all those years and generations. And that is why this book was a new experience for me, because I was not aware of any these plots or anything. And regarding Mahabharata, I had watched it when in my childhood when it came on TV. So I don't know if this was discussed there or not. So I don't remember anything. So this book was a new experience for me, considering all the new characters that I got to know. As one of them we had discussed about Amba. So Chitrangad, as you said, not many people have discussed about him. So because a major chunk or major segment in your book speaks about Chitrangad and that part, so that was also very intriguing for me, and it was a new experience to read. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for having me on your channel for
Yeah, sure. This is my first
interview.
interview, so yeah,
So,
welcome, welcome. Thanks for making me acquainted with this, because I was very I was holding back, and you made me get into this and try. So let's see how it goes.
and I would ask the fellow authors that talk to Abhilash. He's really a good interviewer, can give you a lot of good
Thank you, sir.
interviews. So all the best
Yeah,
to you
sure.
for
Thank
your
you.
venture, and
Yeah, thank you, sir.
thank you, Abhilash.
Bye.